Hey guys, for this video what I want to do is I want to show you how to use Excel to find some descriptive statistics of our data and also how to set up a frequency distribution. So what I already have entered in some data. I have enrollment data and I have the proportion receiving financial aid. I deliberately started making this look not very attractive. So the purpose of a spreadsheet is to be able to show a lot of information to people. So sometimes you have to reformat the width of cells so that it fits the data that you have. So you want to make sure that all of your headings and everything fit within the width of your spreadsheet. And then you also want to do things to make it so that it stands out. Maybe you want to change the color. Maybe you want to center it so that people looking at it can tell what each of the columns represent. It's very important so that there's a context of this. You can also rename these tabs down here. So for the first one, I want to rename it as just this is my data information. You can do a lot of different things to make this look really nice. So there you have the freedom to kind of play with it. What I want to do is just show you how to use the built-in features of Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by building the enrollment category first. And so I'm going to copy this information. To copy, you can either right click and select copy. I always use Control and the letter C. So if you hit the Control button and the letter C, notice that it highlights everything and it shows you that it's highlighted everything from 2 through 26. And then I'm going to click over to Sheet 2. This is where I'm going to build everything. So in here, I copied in my information, and to paste it, I just hit Control V, or you can right click and hit Paste. So you have a couple different options. I have all of the categories in here. I haven't made it look nice, so I'm going to adjust the width of all of these so that everything fits in nicely. And then I'm going to do some minor reformatting. As far as the reformatting goes, it's completely up to you how you want to, like color selection, how do you want to organize it? Do you want the descriptive statistics down at the bottom? Do you want it up at the top? You have a lot of freedom to do that. So like I said, I have already gone through and put in all of the headings just to make it save a little bit of time. Okay, and then so what I'm going to do is maybe for my descriptive statistics, I want to do all descriptive statistics in blue, and I'm going to bold that. So my descriptive statistics, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and highlight these, and I'm going to bold them. I'm going to center them so they look a little bit nicer. And then under cell styles, I'm just going to pick a nice blue color just to kind of go with the blue, just to set it apart to make it obvious what I have here. And then down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight these also, and I'm going to go ahead and select bold, and I'm going to use that same blue color just so that I know that my descriptive statistics stand out a little bit. Like I said, you have the freedom to set it up however you want to, but sometimes it's nice to differentiate things by adding color. So I'm going to use the formulas. By using the formulas, it makes things a lot easier. So what I want to do is hit equal average, and then you double click it, and this will find the average of whatever cells you tell it to. You can either type in A1:A25, or you can come over here and highlight the information that you want to find the average of. And so then I would just put those in, close my parentheses, and I'm going to hit tab because I want to go to the next, to the right. And so for median, I'm going to do the same thing. There's a formula for median in Excel. I'm going to do equals median. And then if you want to, you can either right click it. Like I said, you can go and copy it again, or you can do A1:A25. Okay, and then for the standard deviation, we're going to do equals ST, and for this one we want to select stdev.s. That stands for the standard deviation of the sample, which will use the correct formula. Since the last thing that I copied was A1 through A26, I can just hit Control V again. Never mind, it won't let me do that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and you can highlight it, or you can do A1 through A25. The minimum, there is a command in here. You just type equals min. And again, I can do A1. Whoops, I forgot the parenthesis. It's very important to include those parentheses. A1:A25. Max, we're going to do equals the maximum, and what it's doing is it's going to go through whatever cells you put. So again, I'm using A1 through A25. Sometimes it's easier for me to just type it in rather than select it. The number of classes you can choose either 6 or 7 or however many that you need. In this case, I'm going to use 6 as my class width. So now I have all of my descriptive statistics set up. The mean of the enrollment is 10,347. I did forget to rename this. I do want to name this down here so that I know what the data represents, because it's important for anybody looking at this. So this is my enrollment. So I want to make sure that I name it down here or name it somewhere on the page so people understand what they're looking at. So we could even do descriptive statistics, and then underneath it we could say for enrollment, or you could put in different things. You have a lot of different freedoms in here. So now for the frequency distribution, maybe for the frequency distribution we want to use a different color to have it stand out differently. Maybe for this one we want to choose a nice purple color. And then I'm going to go ahead and bold this just so that we know that this is going to be our frequency distribution so it can stand out. And then I can come up here and again I can choose a nice color. I can make sure that everything is bolded. Maybe I want to do a nice pink color. And some of my colors on here don't show up very well. Then I go look at it on a different color or computer and it looks nicer. So I'm going to bold everything just so that everything stands out. And because I'm doing 6 categories, maybe that I want to go ahead and format the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cells down. Maybe I want to do all of these in purple and bold too so it stands out. You can do whatever color. Like I said, you could fill these in. There's a lot of freedom with setting it up. As far as the class width goes, the class width is going to be your distance from your lower limit to your next lower limit. Remember that our first lower limit is always the minimum. So I can actually put in here, this equals the same as this one, and then just hit enter and it'll automatically populate it in there. And then that way, by using a command instead of typing in my lowest value, when I copy and paste this to another page and I change all of my values for something else, it'll automatically change it for me. So my class width, remember class width is the maximum minus the minimum divided by the number of classes that you want to use, and we always want to round this up. So in Excel, how we can do that is we want to round up, and then I'm going to put parentheses, and I'm actually going to put in my formula that I'm going to use. So I want to take my maximum minus my minimum, so I'm actually just going to click on the minimum, close my parentheses, and I'm going to divide that by the number of classes. So that way if I change this here, it'll automatically change it here. And because I have whole numbers, it tells me how many number of digits do I want to round to. I don't want to round to any, I want to round to 0 because I want it to be an integer. And then I'm going to hit enter. So what it's going to do is it's going to take my maximum minus my minimum, divide it by 6, and automatically round it up to the next whole number. You do have to be careful because if this was an exact value and if this was an exact value, you may miss the maximum. So remember that your class upper limit, your very last one after you do your 6 classes, should contain the 31,111. If it didn't, that means that your class width was an exact value, and it won't round it up if it's exact. It only rounds it up if it has the decimal places 1 through 9. So just watch for that. So now we take our class lower limit, and remember to get to our next class lower limit, we are going to take and put equals. And what I want to do is I want to take this cell right here, and I want to add to it. I want to hit plus instead of the equals. I want to add to it this value right here, but I want to keep this one adding D5. I don't want it to change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a $sign in front of the D and a $sign in front of the 5. And the reason that I'm going to do that, I just realized, let me copy and paste this really quickly. I have it in the wrong cell, so I want to put this here. Let me delete this. Let me Control V here. Okay. So I accidentally had it in the wrong thing. And the reason that I put the dollars in front of there is because it's saying that I want that to keep D5. I wanted to add E5, but now if I drag this down That would give me 3, 4, 5. This would give me 6 classes. What it does is it automatically changes the formula to go up one. So E6, this one is E7. So it's taking this one and adding the class width. So this way it gives me my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes. Remember, the class upper limit is one less than the next class lower limit. So what I can do here is I can take equals and I can do this value right here, -1, and hit enter. And then I can just take and highlight this and drag the little corner until the second to last one. I can't go to this one because there's not a next value. So what I can do to get this one here is I can take and do equals the last value plus my class width, because remember, the distance from your upper class limit to your lower class limit, or sorry, from your class limits from one lower limit to the next is the class width. Okay, so instead of having to do it over and over again, like I said, you have to do this multiple times. We only have 2 categories on this one, but sometimes you have like 6 categories. So instead of having to do this and rebuild it for each individual one, build the entire thing for one category first. Midpoint for this, there's a couple different ways that you can do this. I'm just going to do equals average, and I'm going to do the average of these two, so I'm just going to highlight those two, and then I'm going to hit enter. And what I'm going to do is just drag this down, and it will find the average of all of my class limits. So the midpoint is just giving you the middle point between your lower class limit and your upper class limit. For the frequency, I'm going to skip this for now. I find it easier to find the cumulative frequency in here, because if I do equals frequency on here, this will find the cumulative frequency. So what it's going to do is it wants to find the frequency, and I'm going to highlight all of my data that I want to count. It will count all of my values in this data sequence that fall underneath my class upper limit of 6,943. Okay, I want my A1, sorry, I hit the wrong thing. I want my A1 and my A25 to stay the same. I don't want it to try to go to a different data set, so I'm going to put a $sign in front of A1 and a $sign in front of A and 25. And what it does is it keeps that one the same. It keeps the first one the same, but the F5 will change. So now instead of F5, I want it to be F6. Like if I look at this F6, I want to find all the values that are below this. So I would take and drag this all the way down, and it automatically populates it. The last number should be 25 because I had 25 data points. So all 25 should fall underneath here. If you had 25 data points and this says 24, check your upper class limit, because that means your class width might have been a whole number. Now it's easier to go back and find the frequency, because remember, the relationship between frequency and cumulative frequency is cumulative frequencies is the sum of the frequencies up to that point. So I'm going to start with it being this value. And then for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this value and I'm going to subtract the previous one. And so it'll tell me that 10 of them fell here. If I do 9 plus 19, or 9 plus 10, that gives me 19. And so I can continue this all the way up here, and it will fill it in. And you can always look at your data to make sure that your answer makes sense. You could go through and count. I actually have these in numerical order, so you could go through and count and see that 9 of them fall by 6,943. So if I look at 6,943, at 9, that is the last place that it falls before that. And then I have 10 of them that fall between 6,944 and 11,777. The last column that I'm going to talk about is relative frequency, and then I'm going to show you how to copy this whole thing. I know that for my students right now, they have a project and they have to add the standard deviation. I would go ahead and do that on this screen before doing the next step, but you can go ahead and set it up. Relative frequency, remember that it is the frequency divided by the sum of the frequencies. So what I'm going to type in here is I'm going to type in equals, and I'm going to select the cell, and I'm going to divide it by the sum. I'm actually going to just type in the sum of these cells here. So I'm going to go from here to here. I do want to put a dollar in front of this because I want it to stay the same. I don't want it to choose a different column for me. And so if I set up a dollar here and a dollar here, and then I just hit enter. Oh, it needs me to, yes, it said I didn't put the end parentheses, so that was my fault. But it will correct you if you put something incorrect. And then if I add this all up, my relative frequency here, all of these, remember, need to be between 0 and 1. To make it look a little bit nicer, let's format it to where there's just 2 decimal places, and so that all of them have 2 decimal places, it just looks nicer to have the same formatting. The sum of this, your check to make sure that this is correct, is you want to make sure that the sum of this adds up to be 1. If it doesn't, then you made a mistake somewhere. So since my relative frequency is 1, you would go ahead and put that there. So now what I want to do, like I said, instead of having to rebuild this whole thing, I'm going to add a new sheet in here. Okay, for this one, it's going to be, I'm going to rename it. This is going to be my proportion, and I'm just going to, of students with financial aid. Okay, so that way I know what this is going to represent, and I'm going to come back here. I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to hit the Control button and A, and it will copy everything, and then I'm going to hit Control and C. I'm going to copy the whole thing. So Control A highlights everything, Control C copies it, and then I'm going to come over to here to the proportion of students with financial aid, and I'm going to hit the Control button with V. Control and V, and it should copy the whole thing. It didn't. Okay, let me go back. I don't know why it didn't. Sometimes Excel doesn't do what I want it to, so let me just highlight everything in here that I need highlighted. And I'm going to hit Control and C again, or let me right click it. Oh, now it shows up. It's showing up this time. And then let me go over to proportion of financial aid and hit Control and V, and it will put it in here. You are going to have to reformat the width of all of these. So just drag these over so that it looks a little bit nicer so that everything fits. That doesn't automatically populate. And so once you have everything looking pretty nice, what we are going to do is we are going to go back and we are going to grab the other data set that we have. So once you do this, there is going to be some minor formatting that you're going to have to do because our next data set is dealing with proportions. So I'm going to highlight this row and I'm going to hit Control and C and go to the proportion of students, and I'm going to go down here. I'm going to highlight everything, and I'm going to just clear the contents of this, and then I'm going to hit Control and I'm going to go ahead and copy it. Not copy it, sorry. Let me go back here. Copy this again. Sometimes I hit too many things, or I want it to do stuff that it doesn't want to do. And then I'm going to hit Control and V, and notice it automatically repopulates this. The problem is before we were dealing with large whole numbers. Now we're dealing with something that only has that has 2 decimal places. So what we want to do is we want to increase the number of decimal places that we have. Okay, for the min, the max, we want this to be 2 decimal places because that's all that we have over here. The mean and the median can always go more just so that you have more decimal places. My class width, I do have to change this one because now we don't want to round to the nearest integer. We want to round to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to change that 0 to 2, and now it will automatically change my class width to 2. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same thing again. For the class lower, upper, and the midpoint, I am going to increase this to 2 decimal places. The reason it's giving me an error is because this is saying that it's a negative. What I have to do instead of subtracting by 1, remember that we're dealing with a percentage, so I have to subtract by 0.01. So now it will give me something that works better. I'm going to take and I'm going to just re-drag this in here, and then it'll automatically change it. The last one should, hold on. Oh, it's because I shouldn't have changed this one. This one, remember, I want it to be equals the previous column, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So there's sometimes some minor formatting that you're going to have to do, plus the class width, and hit enter. And so now it sets up nicely. We can see that our relative frequency equals 1, our cumulative frequency is 25. We have all of our midpoints, and so that's what you would have to do. As always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Once you do a proportion one for your other, if you have another proportion one, I would just go ahead and copy this one and use the same formatting for the proportions and use the other one, this formatting for all of your whole numbers. Like I said, as always, thanks for watching.